Hello, everyone, and thank you all very much for coming to today's webinar entitled Our Common Water Future, Open Data Sharing to Advance Research and Environmental Stewardship. My name is Jennifer Abel. I am the training coordinator with Portage Network, and I'd like to begin today by acknowledging that the land which I'm speaking to you from is the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh. This is the 7th webinar in our co-presented series with Global Water Futures. This is a series which aims to educate researchers and data professionals across Canada on research data management best practices and tools that are available to support them. These webinars will help you navigate the evolving RDM landscape as funders, publishers, and the research community increasingly require good RDM practices. In today's webinar, we're going to look at how open data facilitates scientific collaboration, fosters innovation, and supports stronger and more reproducible science to inform decisions. Despite significant investments in the collection of water quality data, barriers to effective and open data sharing have hampered the ability to leverage this information to its full potential. This webinar will explore how DataStream's open access water data platform is addressing this challenge. Free and open for anyone to use, DataStream brings water quality monitoring data together in one place in a consistent format, making it easier to connect results in meaningful ways. We'll learn about some of the key functionality of this open data repository with a focus on features that support fair, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable data management principles. A couple of housekeeping things before we get started in earnest. You have been muted automatically when you entered the webinar room. The webinar is being recorded and the chat may be archived for those who are unable to attend. We encourage you in all of our webinars to use the latest version of Zoom so that you have access to all of the features, including security updates. However, if you haven't updated yet today, maybe wait until after the webinar. Please use the chat feature if you're having technical difficulties or have additional resources to share. And please use the Q&A option to ask questions of the presenters. Questions will be addressed at the end. You may also raise your hand if you wish to ask a question, and questions may be asked in English or French. You can find the complete CARL Code of Conduct at the web address on your screen, which will also be in the chat shortly. CARL and the Portage Network are committed to providing a welcoming, safe, and harassment-free environment for its staff, membership, committees, and working groups, as well as for participants, speakers, and organizers of CARL meetings and events. We do not tolerate harassment of any kind. So with those ground rules down, I'd like to introduce our presenters to you today. Carolyn Dubois is the director of the Water Program at the Gordon Foundation, where she works with partners across sectors in Canada. This work focuses on improving freshwater stewardship through citizen engagement in decision-making and the use of the best available evidence. Carolyn is a passionate advocate for open data and has led the development of DataStream, an online system that provides access to information about water quality. And Patrick Leclerc is DataStream's data specialist at the Gordon Foundation. In this role, he works with communities and other collaborators to continually grow and improve DataStream, an online open access platform for sharing water quality data across Canada. Patrick has a background in water quality and data management and is passionate about working with groups across Canada to help tell their story through data to enact positive environmental change. And now, Carolyn and Patrick, the virtual and pixelated floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that introduction, and just a big thank you for hosting this webinar and hosting us, and to everybody who is attending. So we're just going to get started with a couple of poll questions just to get to know you guys a little bit before we start the presentation. So we'll just pull up the first one now. So do you work with water quality data? Always good for us to know. So please answer this first question.
We're getting a good response rate. We'll give it a couple more seconds. Okay, I think we're pretty stable.
Okay, good, a good mix. So some of you actually have hands-on work with water quality data, so hopefully this will be interesting for you, but also for those of you who don't, so you can sort of suggest DataStream to others who may. So pull up the next poll question. have you heard of us before? Have you heard of DataStream?
Oh, it's a tight battle here, back and forth. Couple more seconds. Last call. Okay, I think we will close it there.
Okay, all right, a really good mix. So for those of you who have heard of DataStream, I hope you'll enjoy today's presentation because we're doing things a little bit differently. We're going to be, as Jennifer introduced, we're going to be sort of really zeroing in on how DataStream applies the FAIR principles. For those of you who haven't heard about us, hopefully this is interesting for you. You'll be getting some context on the platform as a start, so that should help orient you before we dive into FAIR principles. So next slide, please, Patrick. Okay, so really briefly, we're going to start off by providing the audience with some background on DataStream, sort of where we've come from and where we're going. And then we're going to dive into, Patrick will provide a demo of DataStream so you have a really good idea of what the platform looks like and what it can do. Next, Patrick's going to walk us through all of the work that we've done and continuously are doing to meet the FAIR principles, which he'll also be going into depth on. Finally, we'll end with what we're up to next, and we'll take questions. So please, if you do have questions, please ask them. We'd love to hear from you. Okay. So by way of background, I am the director of the water program at the Gordon Foundation. So both Patrick and I work for the foundation, which is headquartered in Toronto, but we have staff now across the country. And the Gordon Foundation is a 55-year-old charitable foundation. We've been around for a long time, and a long part of our history has involved work on water issues in the country. Now, interestingly, 8 years ago, the way that we found ourselves working on building DataStream, this data platform, was a really, really practical one. So the foundation was really focused and is focused on water policy issues. And 8 years ago, we were turning our attention to Canada's Mackenzie Basin, which you can see pictured in the circle here. So it's massive, as you can see. And we were looking for ways that we could engage in freshwater protection and management in this part of the country. And what we found by bringing a lot of really leading experts together was that there actually isn't enough data to be able to say some very basic things about freshwater health. And so that's really how we got started. We started working with the government of the Northwest Territories through this unique partnership that is still going strong today, to build a platform that was intended to pull together data from throughout the basin, and particularly some of the data that was collected through the government of the Northwest Territories facilitated community-based monitoring program, which is very, very cool. And Patrick will be showing you some of their data a little later in this presentation. We can just go to the next slide. So now what we wound up building, just very high level, open access site intended for water quality data, basin level data sets being pulled together, but we've also grown into other places, as I'll tell you about in a bit. It's absolutely free and open for anyone to use, and the intention is to minimize barriers to data access. Next slide. So as promised, as I mentioned, we started in this pink section of the Mackenzie Basin in Canada. And then through partnerships with two other organizations, the Atlantic Water Network and the Lake Winnipeg Foundation, we have since grown into these new regions. Now, the reason for this growth is really, I think, very important, is that once we launched Mackenzie DataStream, we started hearing from others across Canada who said, we've got the exact same problem here. We're having the same challenges around pulling data together. Could we apply that same DataStream model here? Which, as you'll hear in this presentation, it's both, the DataStream model is both a technology, like a technological model, but also sort of the model and how we deliver our programming. And so DataStream is growing rapidly now. We have over 100 groups contributing data to DataStream today, and over 9 million unique observations on the platform. And if you see here, this is a bit of a sneak peek to where we're going next. That grayed out area in the middle is the Great Lakes Basin, and we're currently scoping and developing a Great Lakes data stream. So that'll be coming in 2021. So again, I think I've alluded to this, but I'll just really spell it out. You know, who contributes data to DataStream? The intention here is to be cross-sectoral. So community groups are always a focus. Watershed organizations of all shapes and sizes, academic researchers, and we're hoping to get more and more academics sharing data on DataStream, but we do have a pretty good collection of academic research. Indigenous governments, provincial and territorial governments, as well as the federal government. So as an example, we have an Environment and Climate Change Canada data set for water quality from across the country. And what data is contributed? So we always say the data you find in DataStream is a reflection of the questions people are asking in those places. We can take just about any water quality parameter. We could take as many as 6,000 parameters. Currently we have 200. And so, you know, that's everything from turbidity and pH and temperature to, you know, hydrocarbons in the water, it could be pesticides, metals, anything that people are sampling. DataStream will take that. We take both surface water quality, and most recently we've added sediment data, and that includes both data that is generated in the lab. So you take a sample from a river, for example, bring it to the lab for analysis, we'll take that data, but also field measurements. So, you know, the measurements that are taken while the researcher or the monitor is in the field. Okay, so we're gonna, as promised, we're gonna dive in now. Patrick is going to take over and give you a demo of DataStream.
Awesome, thank you so much, Carolyn. Yeah, so we'll jump in here with a demonstration. We'll start here, we'll do the demo on Mackenzie DataStream. But as Carolyn mentioned, we do have two other DataStream hubs, so Atlantic DataStream and Lake Winnipeg DataStream. So before we dive into kind of the data part of things, which is kind of the meat and potatoes of the site, just want to do a couple quick overviews here on some other things that we do have on the site. So one thing we do is some news. So this is just some updates on maybe things we're doing or things our partners are doing. So recommend going there to check out, kind of see what we're up to. We also have some great resources here, not only, you know, resources on how to use the site, how to get involved, and how to get your data ready to be put onto DataStream, but also some broader things around data management and water quality data. So great resources there. Something else that we're pretty happy about that we did this year is we've actually translated the content on our site into French. So we do now provide the site in both official languages. And then also just a couple things here at the footer. If you want to find out more, you can subscribe to our newsletter. We also do these office hours once a month, so that's where you can come and ask us any questions. You can also follow us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, or check us out on GitHub to get a lot more information on the inner workings of the site. So with that being said, I'm going to jump right into the Explorer data and get into the map. So that's one of the kind of things that makes DataStream stick out compared to other platforms is we do have a map-based search. So the way this map-based search works is you'll see all these different larger bubbles with numbers inside. That's how many locations exist there. So as you click down, you'll see those expand and go to individual points. If you hover over, it'll give you the name of that location. So that's kind of one way to search. So it's really great and tactile. So you can go right in, find an area you're interested in, and find who's monitoring there. You can also add some of these layers we have. So one is for subbasins. We also have watersheds, settled land claims, and historical treaties. And we're always continually adding for that. So it's a great way to see, you know, what watershed you're in if you're unsure. Additionally, you can also search here via the search bar. So you can either filter by organization. So clicking here, you can see all the different organizations that contribute to Mackenzie DataStream and filter by which ones you're interested in. You can also filter by some of the characteristics. So these are just kind of the most popular ones here, as well as by either province or watershed. So with that being said, we're going to dive into this community data set through the Government of the Northwest Territories, as Carolyn mentioned. So when I click on that organization, you'll see I get all the data sets that they have. And when I hover over it, it'll show me, you know, where all that data is at. So I'm going to click in here. So this opens up into our visualization page. So this is where you can visualize the data. So we got a scatter plot here of, as you can see, temperature data. We've got our date range over here. This can be adjusted, so you can just kind of put it to the timeline you're looking for. We also have a list of all of the locations here on the left, which can be toggled on and off, so you can add new ones, so you can cross compare. But you can also compare via the map. So if you see a location that maybe is up or downstream of where you're interested in, you can add that to the comparison, maybe remove one that isn't as interesting, and then go back into the map, and you can see that new data plotted here. So you can kind of compare things in this similar region. We also have different types of plots. So another great one here are blocks plots. This is really helpful for people who are looking to do some QA, QC or quality control on their data. You can start to see where your outliers are and see if you know why those outliers exist. Also gives you some good kind of statistics. You can also change the media type. This one only has surface water, but as Carolyn mentioned, we also take sediment data. You can also choose from a variety of different characteristics. Like Carolyn said, we have over 200 currently in the system. So if I click here on pH, now I get the pH data for that site. You'll also notice these dotted lines just popped up. So these are the CCME, the Canadian Council of Ministers of the Environment, their guidelines for pH. We also have the United States Environmental Protection Agency's guidelines, which can be toggled on and off. We have these for both freshwater and marine, and both acute and chronic. So if you go to the characteristics, any characteristic that has guidelines in brackets here, you can toggle those on and off. We also provide some summary statistics. So this is just, you know, min, max, mean. These are also downloadable. Another thing we've just released this year, which is pretty awesome, are these science explainers. So they help to give actually some more context to people who are looking at the data. So it lets you know what the parameter is, why the parameter matters, and how it's measured. We have these for a number of the different parameters on the site. So once you've kind of looked at the data and the data kind of, you know, appears to be something you're interested in using, you can come over here and via this download button, you can actually download the whole data set. So you just need to agree to the terms and then hit the download button, and it will be downloaded as a CSV file. You can also too, if you know, use the visualizations to determine if you want to use the data. But in addition to that, you can also check out the data set level metadata for the data set. So this just here gives you some information on, you know, who collected the data, how you can get in contact with them if you have any questions. An abstract here that gives you, you know, generally why it was collected and some collection information on how. You can also get the citation here as well. Additionally, we also provide these DOIs. So a DOI is a digital object identifier. It's a persistent link to the data that will never change, kind of like a thumbprint. So it prevents any broken links. If you ever tried to go to a website and the link's broken, DOIs prevent that. They also allow for quick and easy citation and also tracking as well. So you can also access any attachments. So if people have reports or standard operating procedures, they can add those in here as a companion piece to the data set. You can also quickly view the license. So in our case, we use the Open Data Commons, their open data licenses. Also, for example, in the terms of the Government of Northwest Territories, they added a little disclaimer here in addition to their data. We also have an API, which is an application programming interface. And what that does is it allows people to access the data directly from the database programmatically. So you don't actually have to come onto the site and log in. You can use the API to access and pull and filter the data. So a good example of that recently is we had somebody who was looking at getting all of the river temperature data for Atlantic Canada. So using the API, they were able to make a request, pull all that data down, and get a large dump of data all at once, filtered for just the parameters they're looking for, rather than going in through each data set at a time. So that's kind of a quick overview of the site. There's definitely a lot more features and interesting stuff. I recommend when you have some time, going in and playing around and kind of seeing what monitors going on in your region. So with that being said, I'm going to go back here to the presentation and get into some of the FAIR principles. So for those of you that aren't familiar, the FAIR principles are a set of principles that were designed to kind of talk about open data. FAIR is an acronym that stands for Findable, Accessible, Interoperable, and Reusable. It's kind of a more of like a step-by-step thing as well. So the reason so FAIR kind of brings you step-by-step to the ultimate goal of reusability. The reason the FAIR principles were kind of designed were to make it so that data could be reused over and over again, and we maximize the usefulness of the data. So you start with findability, you need to find it, and at the end, hopefully you can get to good reusable data. So one of the reasons why FAIR is important and why we try to implement them in DataStream. An example of that is this report, or this study, sorry, that was done in the States on water quality data. So what they did is they looked at all of these water quality data in the US, and they tried to determine what was ambiguous and not able to be used for reuse, and what was unambiguous and actually reusable. And what they noticed from this study was actually that the majority of data, about $12 billion, was determined to be ambiguous. So this meant that it was missing information, had incorrect information, or had information that didn't have enough context or definitions behind it for people to understand what it meant. So this meant that there was a lot of data that actually had been collected over years that was now useless because there wasn't good enough knowledge transfer through robust metadata about the data set and the data level itself. So the FAIR principles are to hopefully prevent this, and I'll show you how we're trying to work to kind of stop this idea of collecting data and then losing it and not being able to reuse it. So the first step in the FAIR principles is findable. So what this means is that the data should be easy for both humans and computers to find. So some ways that we do this in DataStream to make sure that this is possible. One is through the map-based search tool and the visualizations. As you saw through my demonstration, people can come in, easily click through the site, find a place that they're interested in, then open up the visualization tool. And through the visualizations, they can go in and say, okay, does this have the parameters I'm looking for in the dates I'm looking for? What sites should I be interested in? So it allows people to go through and play with the data in a quick and easy way to find what they're interested in and what they're looking for. We also provide robust machine readable metadata. So this metadata is really important for, number one, determining fit for purpose. Is this organization using methods that you're looking for and providing data that you want to use? But also it's machine readable, which is really important. So people who are searching through the site or scouring through the internet can then find this metadata and hopefully get the information they need. Also, by having this machine readable metadata, we've also have allowed ourselves to cross-share it. So currently our metadata is being cross-shared on Google datasets as well as on FIRDR, which is the Federal Research Data Repository. So this just brings more eyes to the metadata, so then people can see it, see what they're interested in, go to the DataStream site, and then access it. We also offer the DOIs, as I mentioned before. So these DOIs make the data searchable because there's a persistent link that's never going to be removed. So let's say I cite a data set in my article and I don't have a DOI, that link could be broken. Then I go to find it and it's unfindable. Now it doesn't exist anymore. So that's one of the key things with DOIs. And again, they're this persistent and unique identifier. So if you search that identifier, you're going to quickly and easily find that data set. And finally, search engine optimization. So in today's day and age, this is a pretty key and important thing. People are using search engines, Google, Bing, to try to find resources. So we've done a lot of work to make sure that our site is searchable. Some things there is we made all of our on application pages static, so they're readable by a machine. A machine can go through and find keywords there, which is really important. We've added tags to all of our photos. So this means that our photos are now searchable, as well as we've added descriptors. So when you search it, there is like a little descriptor that pops up on Google and lets you know what kind of information you're looking at. So these are all ways we've worked to try to make it so humans can come onto the site and click through and find it, but also so that it's findable by machines as well. So the second stage here is once you find the data needs to be easily accessible. So people need to be able to go in and then pull that data out. So some of the big things here, one is that DataStream doesn't need a login to download the data, and it's free to use. So I don't know if you've ever gone and found an article you're really interested in. You go to look at the article, there's a paywall. That's a barrier, and sometimes, you know, people will say, okay, I'll just pass on that and go to the next thing. So what we want to do is we want the data to be open and accessible to everybody. So by being free to use, people can come in, they don't have to worry about having to pay for it. And then no login is also seems kind of trivial, but for a lot of people, they are, for safety reasons, uncomfortable maybe about setting up passwords, or people also just don't like having a million passwords all over the place. And then another thing that we really put a lot of effort and time into, but isn't, you know, so concrete, is having a clear and easy user interface, or UI. So we really want to make sure, you know, on our site, there's a big download button. It's easy to see, easy to access. You know what you're getting. The visualizations and the click-throughs are easy to understand, and it's kind of a simple flow. So we put a lot of time making sure that users of all kind of ranks can go in and find the information and access it clearly on DataStream. So interoperability, this is kind of one of the bigger, more complex terms. What it means is that data can be integrated with other data, but also into existing applications or workflows or systems. So this just means that the data can speak to each other, both to other data and then to other systems. So one of the big things we've done is our API, as I mentioned earlier. So what the API does is it allows for the data to be accessed, read, and downloaded programmatically. This is really important because it allows for mass data ingestion, and also for, you know, this idea of big data. We're living in this world where we are trying to make more data-driven decisions. That's really hard when you have to pay somebody to go to every single source and manually download the data and parse through it. So the API kind of changes that. So it allows for direct querying of our database and to download large amounts of data. We also make sure that we use a common standard. So we use the OData standard. So this allows for people who are used to that standard to easily understand the API. And we also share all the information on that via GitHub. So people can understand, you know, how the API works and what we're doing to make that more accessible. We also have this ETL process we've just recently created. So what that stands for is extract, transform, load. And what that means is it allows us actually to integrate the other way. So instead of people pulling from DataStream, it allows us to pull from existing open databases, transform the data, and then put it into our platform. This is really great for people who already have some kind of open data system. Instead of having them to recreate it, we can kind of pull from that, help aggregate and share the data. And then we also provide the data in a non-proprietary format. In our case, it's CSV. So this means you don't need any kind of fancy machine. You don't need to have GIS. You don't need to have, you know, Excel even to open this. It can be opened by a multitude of different programs. And so that's really important for the interoperability. So through all that, this takes us to our end goal, you know, the reusability. So this is where we kind of wanted to get. The crowning achievement is, how can we make this data reusable? How can we make sure that somebody can collect data today and then in 20, 50, 100 years still be able to use it and have all the necessary information? So the big piece that kind of is the cornerstone of everything here and allows us to really have this reusability is that we do use a common data standard. In our case, it's a modified version of the United States Environmental Protection Agency's Water Quality Exchange Standard. So this is actually the largest data standard in the world. They've got a lot of data and it's used by a lot of organizations there. One of the big premises of this is that there's a lot of required columns. So actually more required columns than most people would be used to. So people can't just go to DataStream and input, you know, a parameter name and a result unit and then be done with it. There's a lot of other information. We want people to tell us what the site is, some information about the site, what kind of water body is it, all the way to, you know, what lab methods are you using and what labs did you get the data sampled at. This way we can really ensure that we know what the data is about. Also too, in the previous study, the key things they found were that result sample fractions and method speciations weren't included, and that made a lot of the data unusable. So we really pushed to force people to start including that information with their metadata. Or sorry, with their data. Once people then get all that data together, put it into our standard and go to upload, we then do a validation process. So we check to make sure all of the appropriate columns have been inputted with the appropriate values. And then if there are any errors, we kick it back and make them, give them a chance to kind of make those changes before they upload it. And that way all of the data follows one similar pattern. This also, you know, in terms of the other ones, helps a lot with interoperability as well, because all our data is in the same format. It's easy to cross compare two data sets because they're going to be looking the same with the same terminology. And finally, we share that data standard open on GitHub. So you can go out there, you can check, see all the decisions we've made. We also compare ourselves to the original WQX in order to increase the interoperability there. So that's kind of the big cornerstone of everything, is this data standard. It's really what allows us to have, you know, all of these other tools. But some other great things we do to help with reusability is, one is data licensing. So we ensure that the data that's put onto DataStream has a license, and has a license that has been vetted and is an open license that people can then go and view. This is really important because when you find the data, we want to make sure that it is reusable, that people know how it can be reused. If people have no idea if it's allowed to be reused or how, it's not really reusable. So we use the Open Data Commons license for that, and data versioning. So as people add data to their data sets or modify it, we change the version so people know what version they're on. And then if they want to reuse that data, they know to go back and say, oh, the version's changed. I'm going to download this new version of the data and update the data as I go. So that's kind of everything. That's kind of the main principles of FAIR. But I'm going to throw it back over to Carolyn to kind of talk about how we implement some of these FAIR principles outside of just the technological features on the site.
Perfect. Okay, I've been busily answering questions. So I may have some more answers around metadata standards just for those of you asking. But we'll dive back in. So I think one of the things Patrick and I were reflecting on in preparing this presentation was how much work we do beyond like the actual platform in terms of promoting sort of FAIR principles and sort of all the work that we do. So I'll just start off sort of with, you know, the science literacy, those science explainers that you saw on the platform. This is one right here that you can see with the fish. One of the things that we've heard from a lot of users, a lot of just the communities and people we work with, is just some basic information around why you should care about a given water quality parameter and just what it means. You know, we're not interpreting it, we're trying to sort of just get across what that parameter is telling you. So we've built those into the system to try to help make that easy for people to access. And Patrick, if you could just go back to the slide, thanks. Okay. Oh, okay, perfect. And the other piece is also around data literacy. So Patrick and some of my other colleagues have put on this fantastic Dive into Data webinar series, which we began this year, which I highly recommend. We cover a really nice range of topics, everything from sort of like Excel tips and tricks, just sort of basic, like how do you use Excel to get your data organized, to, you know, deep dives into our data standard. One of my favorites this year so far was we hosted representatives from the US Environmental Protection Agency to put on a webinar about their WQX data standard, which we use on DataStream, as you've heard. And it was just a really great opportunity to hear directly from those who have developed and have been maintaining that standard and how it's worked in the States and, you know, what they've learned. And we had participants from sort of all levels of government, researchers, communities. So that's the kind of thing that we're looking to do, is to just sort of help promote some of those pieces. And then one of the other important things we're doing is just keeping open lines of communication. One of the things we do is those open office hours. You can literally just sort of, you know, come into those sessions. They're open for everyone to participate in. Ask any question that you like, and you'll get to pick Patrick and Will, our software developers, to pick their brains on things. And we also reach out in case people don't think to tune in. We're currently in the middle of a process we affectionately call our follow-up season, which is really just us getting in touch with water researchers and monitors as they come back from the field season, and just checking in with them, asking them how they're using the platform, how it's working for them, and most importantly, what they don't like about DataStream. And it's been with that feedback that we've been able to continually improve the platform over the last few years. And finally, I'll just focus on sort of just some of the work that we've done around promoting public access. So for those of you in our water world, you'll be aware of sort of some of the Canada Water Agency work and thinking that's taking place. So, you know, we look to contribute to some of those discussions and really just promoting public access to publicly funded water data. we'll just move on from there since I've already gone over those, the use of common standards. Okay, and so just to back up to sort of 20,000 feet, the foundation, the Gordon Foundation got into this business of, you know, promoting open access for a reason. And that really is that, you know, we saw that there was a lot of research, there was a lot of monitoring happening out there in the world, in Canada, and it just wasn't being pulled together in a way that people could get their hands on it. So this really is our goal. Our goal is to just make that data available. We don't interpret it, we just serve it up as best we can. We sometimes refer to DataStream as sort of a neutral bucket for data. We just want to make it useful for others. And the real why behind that is that we, you know, once the data is available in formats that people can use, or at least assess whether or not the data is useful to them, they can do interpretation and say, okay, well, what does that data mean? So we recently had a really, really fantastic example of this playing out in that WWF Canada, as part of their freshwater assessments that they do for the entire country. They were able, so this map that you see here, this shows the results from these assessments, which essentially just assign a grade to, you know, watershed health according to a number of sort of parameters. And these gray parts on the map are places where WWF did not have enough data in order to provide a grade. Now, this is the most recent watershed health report. There were actually more gray areas in the 2017 version, meaning that we're really making progress. And what was really cool actually this time around was that some of the areas they were able to assess this time around, it was thanks to community collected data that was available on DataStream. So really quite literally putting some of these local research initiatives on the map and getting that data used in assessments like these. So WWF is a great example, but there are many others who are pulling together data in these really, really helpful assessments and research projects. And it really is only when we have work like this, we have data interpretation happening, whether it's on the Canadian, you know, sort of national scale, or whether it's within a community led by a First Nation, that you can start to have action around, you know, water protection and policies that are based on the best available evidence. So for us, that's why the foundation is interested in this and why we're in it in the first place. So if I can just highlight some key takeaways from this talk today. I think for us, one of the key things we just keep wanting to promote is using existing standards wherever possible. And we really do advocate for that US EPA standard for water quality, because for us, incorporating that into our platform was a game changer. It solved so many problems around making sure there was sufficient observation level metadata and data set level metadata for people to really make informed choices about what data they use in their studies. Please share your data on open repositories like DataStream. You know, I think there's a lot of really good domain specific repositories out there, and so we certainly encourage that. And finally, please do get and stay in touch with us. We're always open to feedback. We'd love to see more data coming online. If you think there's something we can collaborate on, please reach out to us. And one good way to do that, well, easy way, you can email us, but you can also sign up for our newsletter. You'll get a lot of information about all of the many things that we're up to. So just before I sign off and hand it over to questions, I'd just like to thank our partners. I can't emphasize this enough. Our partnerships have been so key to DataStream, you know, having the impacts that it is having and the growth that we're having. I'm sitting in Toronto. You know, we couldn't have the data that we have for the Northwest Territories or Atlantic Canada, the Lake Winnipeg Basin, without these really, really strong, really awesome partnerships. And of course, a big thank you to our sponsors and contributors. And this last slide just has some information on how to get in touch with us. I will put the link to signing up for our newsletter as well in the chat for you while we get some questions going. I'll leave it there.
And we have one last poll before we
That's right.
move into questions. So based on what you've heard, I mean, you can answer, yeah, oops, sorry, stop, relaunch. Now you can vote. The folks who haven't voted yet are maybe signing up for the newsletter right now.
Sorry, we're asking for too much at once.
Okay, we'll give it a couple more seconds here. Okay.
Well, that's good. Hopefully some of the not sures will get in touch, and please do recommend it. That's really great to see.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Carolyn and Patrick, for that great overview. It's very clear and very well explained. So if you have questions that you haven't asked already, please put them in the Q&A. You can also put them in the chat, but it's easier if you put them in the Q&A. But I will start with one that is in the chat right now from Marie Ducharme, who is new in the Water Resource Branch of the Yukon Environment Department. And she's looking at the map and doesn't see any data from the Yukon.
I'd be happy to take that one. Marie, the Mackenzie Basin does extend into the Yukon, and so we would love to have some more data from the Yukon Territory. Are in conversations with wonderful groups like the Yukon River Interoperable Watershed Council, among others. But no, there's not a ton of data yet, but we hope that that will change as we keep growing west.
So Marie should get in touch with you and find out more about how this could evolve.
Oh, please do. And some of your colleagues likely know us and talk to us all the time.
Great. Okay, so a couple of some questions here in the Q&A, and thank you, Carolyn, for answering some of them during the presentation as well. So Suzanne has a question going back to the demonstration of the pH graph in the system. The pH was indicated to be stream pH within 6.5 to 8.5, which is slightly different than CCME's water quality for the protection of aquatic life, which is 6.5 to 9.0. Could you clarify the difference?
Yeah, I can. I think if the slide was this one, I don't know if it was a different one. It is 9 and 6.5, so I don't know. It might have just been. I went through.
Maybe the picture, Patrick, and I got some colleagues behind the scenes to answer some questions on this. I don't know if that'd be helpful.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm unsure of exactly which slide.
I thought maybe that picture.
Oh, this one right here. Okay, she's talking about this picture right here.
So
right, that one there. Yep.
That one there. Okay. Yeah, I don't know.
I think maybe whoever asked this question can fill us in some more. But what my colleagues who've worked on these have said is the explainer image is indicating a normal range for streams, but can be lower or higher depending on the water body. CCME guidelines are more particular to impact on aquatic life. The explainer is indicating normal stream range. Now, we'd be happy to go into more depth for you. This is not my wheelhouse, clearly, as I'm asking my colleagues to help me out. But please do get in touch if you've got further thoughts on that.
Great, thanks. And yeah, if there are any really specific technical questions, they might be more useful just to send in person. And I will be sending out the slides and the link to the video after the webinar, as well as Carolyn and Patrick's contact information. So you will be able to get in touch with them and ask those detailed questions. Someone has asked, I like to share my data, but I prefer to wait until my work is published. So do you offer an embargo?
This is a very timely question. It's something we've been thinking quite a lot about over the last few months. We have the capacity, we have a sort of a, what's the right way to put this? We have an unofficial embargo process. So it is possible at this point to put data into DataStream, and Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it will publish after a year. Is that correct, Patrick? Yeah.
Or sooner if you want.
Sorry, say that again, Patrick?
So, or sooner, yeah, or sooner if you'd like.
Yeah. So this is our current sort of workaround for people with your exact sort of, situation where you would like to publish before the data goes live. But it's also nice because while you're thinking about your data, you can load it into the system and not do it after the paper publishes, which often, it's kind of an afterthought later on and people don't get around to it. So we may be making this a more formal process. It's something we've been sort of scoping over the last few months.
Great. Another question from Marie. Have there ever been any thoughts about storing hydrology data as well?
There have many thoughts about hydrology data, requests for hydrology data and fish data and other data too. We don't currently, it's not our focus. The reason is because compared, when we got started, compared to water quality data, hydrology data was relatively well managed. So we really saw water quality as the biggest gap area where we could have the biggest impact. And I guess I would just leave it at, we've really got our hands full with water quality. So it's, one of our principles is really do this and do it really, really well. But it is constantly on our minds. We just don't take it now.
All right. I'm a big fan of doing things well myself. Quality assurance and quality control question from Suzanne. I understand that USEPA Water Quality Exchange is a framework to submit data, not a standard to ensure the integrity of the water data. I.e. there are standards for metadata. Are there standards that must be followed prior to the data being accepted? Laboratory methods in the name of the lab is imperative, but also the calibration used for the equipment for in situ water quality measurements. So in sum, while DataStream appears to be a great tool, is there a cross-check mechanism to ensure the credibility of the data, especially since it's being received from a number of different sources?
Patrick, would you like to take this one or would you like me to?
It's up to you. I don't mind. Or yeah, I guess I can take it. Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, like you said, Suzanne, there is a lot of things that we put into place. So you have to have a lot of the lab and method information so you can get more context. And then also too, yeah, so the WQX model is about having kind of the metadata surrounding the data point. So people have to have the recommended columns and use the proper names. But we don't actually force people to do any kind of QA, QC on their data. We do a little bit on upload, so we make sure that your temperature isn't above 100 or that your pH isn't outside of the kind of 0 to 14 range. So we do a few things, but overall, in terms of the QA, QC, we leave that on kind of the end user. So we provide that really robust metadata both at the data set level and at the data level so that the user can go and contact the person who collected the data and ask those questions themselves if they're concerned. And it's up to you to kind of see if the data is fit for purpose. So while we don't QA, QC the data, we do kind of give you the tools to find out if that data is fit for the purpose you're using for, or to contact people if you want to get more information on the processes they used.
Great, thanks for that. A question from the Atlantic Water Network. So much thought and work has been done to incorporate the FAIR principles to DataStream. What's next on your list to incorporate FAIR principles into DataStream? As well, great presentation.
Thank you very much. Patrick, did you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so, I mean, we're always, I can think kind of like focused on the FAIR principles. So some key things that we're kind of looking at doing moving forward. We're looking at kind of improving some of the findability of the data sets. So we want to improve some of the search filters on the site so that people can kind of narrow down the data to what they're really looking for. In terms of interoperability, we're looking at trying to find ways where we can kind of get the data so you can download it in kind of these packages that you're kind of have all the data you're looking for. And that also kind of makes it more reusable. So you can kind of do some more searching. So those are kind of some of the big features that come to mind right now. Yeah, I think that's the big ones that are hitting me at the top of the head. I don't know if there's anything, Carolyn, that I forgot, but I think that's some of the big stuff.
Patrick's being sort of modest in the sense that the changes to the search features are massive, big changes. So they will be changes to the UI that will be coming, we hope, late next year, but it will just dramatically improve searchability. And also just it'll make searches more powerful. It'll make tailoring what you want to download more powerful. These are big changes that are coming.
So that actually segues really nice into our next question, which is asking about searches. This is from Paul, who says, it seems like there's a max location limit on the search tool. Is there a way to find locations that have the most detections for a particular parameter?
Do you want to answer?
No, please go ahead.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah, Paul, that's a great question. So currently there isn't a way to do that on the system. There is through the API, if you are comfortable using that. We do have a count, so you can actually go through and count and get the count for how many observations occur for different parameters. That isn't currently an interface on the site. Like Carolyn said, that's kind of part of this next phase we're looking at, is how can we narrow down that search? So like Jennifer said, that was kind of a perfect question to come after the other one, because that is really something we're looking at and making the ability to do that more friendly on a user interface side, but it is currently possible via the API.
That's great. Thanks, Patrick. So we don't seem to have any more questions at this time. So I will say once again, thank you so much to Carolyn and Patrick for that presentation. It was really clear and really informative, and I learned a lot, and I hope everyone else did too. Oh, we have one more question. Oh, it's a comment from Paul. This is fantastic work. I agree, Paul, and I think everyone else does too. So just a reminder that I will be sending out, as I mentioned, the slides and the link to the webinar video, which will be on the Carl YouTube channel in a couple of days. And if you have any questions of the presenters, they will be copied as well on that email, so you can shoot them an email directly. We do have a survey for giving feedback on these presentations, which is, the link has just been put into the chat. We'd love to hear how you've been finding these webinars. In terms of not finding them locationally, but finding them as being useful for you. As well, a reminder that our last webinar in our partnership with Global Water Futures is coming up this time next week. We'd love to see you all there. This will be a webinar on an introduction to the Compute Canada Federation and how that works for researchers in a number of different areas. And Patrick has just put emails into the chat. Oh, that was to Marie. I'll put that there. A reminder, yeah, I will be sending out information for how you can get in touch with the presenters after this. Thank you all very much for coming, and thank you again, Patrick and Carolyn. This has been a great webinar. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, everyone, and we will hopefully see you again next week.
Great. Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks, everyone.